YouTube, I think it's safe to say that the Atlanta Hawks have had a offseason for the ages as far as their franchise goes, making big splash moves all across the board. In draft and trades primarily, the Atlanta Hawks are clearly looking to put a different look on the floor as far as their roster in 2025 for the NBA season upcoming. And in this video, we're going to be doing a deep dive into all of it. Everything the Hawks have done this summer as far as the offseason, every move they've made, we're going to cover it in this video. We're also going to be doing a deep dive on their roster and why I think personally that the Hawks are being underrated across the NBA media landscape and the NBA community for the 2025 NBA season. A lot of people say that this team is entering a complete rebuild. I disagree. A lot of people also say they're going to be at the bottom of the league in 2025 NBA season. I disagree with that as well. I think instead of rebuilding, the Hawks are retooling, which is a big difference. And I think they're going to be somewhere around the play-in game. I think that's what you can expect for this team moving forward. They still have a lot of good players. So like I said, deep dive on the offseason, everything they've done, every move they've made, and their roster. Let's talk about why I think the Hawks are being mischaracterized by the NBA community. It's Atlanta Hawks deep dive time. Let's get into it, folks. So as I mentioned, we're going to start with all of the offseason moves, every single one they made, and we're going to start with the re-signings. There's only one re-signing for the Atlanta Hawks, and that is the guard, Vit Krejci, who will return on a multi-year deal. Again, we're going to talk about all these players in the roster deep dive in a little bit. I actually like Vit Krejci a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense why you'd bring him back on a multi-year deal. Good re-signing for the Hawks. As far as the additions, you've made quite a few. I mean, and some notable ones at that. In the Dejounte Murray trade, which we'll get into, you acquired Dyson Daniels, who is a player I'm quite high on. You know, this is a player with a lot of size for a guard. He's a good playmaker and a solid defender as well. And I think, you know, can add a little bit more versatility defensively to the Hawks backcourt with a lot of upside for the future. He's a young player. You also get EJ Liddell, Larry Nance Jr., and Cody Zeller in the trade with the Pelicans, you know, sending away Dejounte Murray in that package. EJ Liddell, kind of a project piece, not sure how much playing time he'll get this season. Larry Nance Jr., a good, solid big man role player for the Hawks, I would imagine in 2025. This guy's still got a lot of game left in him. And Cody Zeller, kind of a throw-in piece. Have to see if, you know, what his role will be on this team. They have a lot of bigs. So those are the additions. I mean, you know, pretty notable ones. Again, we'll talk about the Dejounte Murray trade a little bit, but the departures are pretty big as well. I mean, you lose Saddiq Bey via free agency, and I think this is not the biggest deal in the world. I like Saddiq Bey as a player. I think he was okay for the Hawks. He had a bad year last year. He's coming off an injury. He ends up signing a multi-year deal with Washington, and, you know, that's a good move for them, but, you know, you added a lot of wings and, you know, shooting depth. As far as losing Saddiq Bey, I'm not sure how many minutes he would get in that wing rotation as it is. You know, you have a lot of wings in that rotation. Not the biggest deal in the world, like I said. AJ Griffin. You actually traded AJ Griffin to the Rockets in a separate trade from the Dejounte Murray one, and this is something not a lot of people have talked about. I mean, Atlanta basically gets in this three-team deal with the Miami Heat and the Houston Rockets the rights to Nikola Jurisic. I hope I'm saying that right. Jurisic, who was the 43rd pick in the 2024 NBA draft. Now, AJ Griffin, the experiment there didn't really work out. You selected him 16th overall in the 2022 NBA draft. You never really quite found a significant role with the Hawks, and again, I think the wing depth is pretty big on this team, and you got a lot of good ones right now. You know, this is just a player you didn't really feel confident with to build with moving forward, so, you know, why not get some value for him? Maybe you like Jurisic a little bit better, fit your long-term plans a little bit more, and, you know, I like the move, I really do. And the big one for the departures category being Dejounte Murray, probably your second best player, unquestioned. Had the best year of his career offensively last year, really stepped up when Trey Young went down. But, you know, as far as the trade, I think you really did a good job of acquiring good value for Dejounte Murray. You know, this is a player on a long-term contract who is a star caliber player. Let's not get that twisted. Star caliber player, all-star player. He is that good, but, you know, the pairing with him and Trey Young just didn't work out. You know, it just wasn't the best fit, I think, on multiple levels. And again, he's on a long-term contract, and if you really don't believe in this pairing with Dejounte Murray and Trey Young, it's clear that they chose Trey Young to build with moving forward. People are saying Trey Young's still going to get traded. I don't believe that. I think he's there to stay in Atlanta. I think this whole retooling is to be around Trey Young, not to move on from him, okay? So I think we could put those rumors to bed, at least for this season. But, you know, the Dejounte Murray trade, I think it's better to do it now rather than later. His value is super high coming off that highly productive season. I do like the move for the Pelicans as well. I talked about that in the Pelicans deep dive, and, you know, I just think both teams won this trade. You end up getting Dyson Daniels out of it, who is a quality player right now with a high upside ceiling moving forward. You get 2 first-round picks out of it. I mean, this is just a good deal. So you move on from Dejounte Murray with this retool and roster, kind of shake up, and I just think it makes sense for what the Hawks are trying to do. So those are all the additions, re-signings, and departures. Again, we're going to talk about all these players that are, on the roster for the Hawks in the roster deep dive, which, there's going to be a lot of players we talk about because the Hawks have a ton of depth. But first, we have to talk about the draft. And the 2024 draft saw the Hawks winning the lottery. Quite literally, they won the lottery, folks, and they cash out big time on first overall pick, the French wing, Zaccharie Risacher. And there's been some criticism of this pick, not a lot, but just a little bit. People say he's not ready, not worthy of a first overall pick, didn't have the best statistical production in France. That's nonsense. Listen, you're not drafting a player based on their college or overseas production. Statistically, you are drafting the player that they will become. It's called a prospect for a reason. These are players that haven't developed fully yet, and I think Zaccharie Risacher fits the Hawks the best at the first overall selection, and I think he clearly has one of the highest ceilings in the draft. You had the 9th best odds to win the lottery, and you end up doing it, and you score probably the best wing in the draft, no question about it, who fits a big need on this team, which is versatile defense. Now, Zaccharie Risacher's defense is probably his best trait at this moment. He does have a lot of upside in other areas. Offensively, again, we'll talk about the players in the roster later, but you feel maybe the biggest need on this team, which is a versatile defender from the wing that can guard multiple positions. Zaccharie Risacher fits the build day one, and as I mentioned, he has plenty of upside to develop those other skills on the other end of the floor, for many years to come, right? So this is a great pick for the Hawks, and again, you fill a need right now, and you also get maybe the best wing in the draft. It's way better than the 9th pick that you were going to have, which, wouldn't have been as good as Zaccharie Risacher. So I know he's had an up and down summer league, but again, we'll talk about that later. You also end up getting, in the second round, like I said, Nikola Jurisic in that trade for AJ Griffin. So, this is a home run draft for the Hawks, no question about it. A+ draft. I mean, you come into it with the 9th best odds, probably I think it was like a 4.5% chance to win the first overall pick. You end up getting it. I don't know how anyone can criticize this pick. They made out swimmingly in this draft. So those are all of the offseason moves, every single one they've made, and now, folks, my favorite part of the deep dives. I know it's your favorite part of the deep dives. This is what we're all here for, the 2025 Atlanta Hawks roster deep dive. We're going to go through every player that I think is worth mentioning, and the Hawks have quite a few of them because this is a deep team with a lot of young talent. Let's go player by player and really dissect this roster for the 2025 Hawks. Let's get into it. Quick disclaimer before I do, Hawks fans, let me know how you're feeling about your roster and everybody on it. I love hearing from the individual fan bases of the deep dive teams I'm doing. I want to hear from Hawks fans. Where you at, Atlanta? So I don't know how we can start with anyone else, and this player has been very, mischaracterized and underrated within the media for a long time now. Ever since that 2021 Eastern Conference Finals run, this player has been expected to do similar things every season, and I think, has had some ups and downs just a little bit, but at the end of the day, this is one of the best point guards in the league, and that is your franchise player and cornerstone, Trey Young. Make no mistake about it, Hawks fan or not, Trey Young is a elite tier point guard, playmaker, and shot creator in this league. It is not even up for debate. He has a special type of playmaking ability that you rarely see in this league. His ability to run an offense efficiently and make plays in the half court setting, the open court setting, his passing ability, his court vision, his basketball IQ is off of the charts. I don't care what anyone says about Trey Young. I know he's small. I know he doesn't defend well, and I know that's going to be an issue when he's on the floor. But what you're getting with him on the floor is a generational playmaking talent that can just make plays with the ball in his hands that not a lot of people have ever been able to make, okay? On a consistent basis throughout a game. He's a workhorse playmaker. You can put the ball in his hands, every possession, and he'll find something good generally. Not to mention his scoring ability. I mean, this is a guy that can average 25 points and 10 assists a game from the point guard position every season. That's what you can get out of Trey Young, no question about it. The scoring is, a dynamic shooting gravity ability. He can pull defenders out from about 30 feet at any given moment. He is off the dribble, one of the best three-point shooters and most dynamic ball handling scorers in the entire league, okay? His quickness, his ability to get defenders off balance, his ability to navigate through defenses in the half-court setting is elite. I don't want to hear anything else about it. I know the defense is subpar. It's probably always going to be. He's just not big enough and doesn't have the proper physical tools to be able to be a great defender. The best you can hope for him on defense is that he's not a liability consistently. The offense is just so good that I just don't think in a perfect scenario or even a good scenario, it matters as much as you'd think. Look at how Luka Doncic went all the way to the NBA Finals last season being one of the worst defenders in the league. It doesn't have to be your point guard who is, the primary facilitator and playmaker on this team has to be a good, a great defender or even a good one to get to that level, okay? You just need the proper proper tools around him to cover his mistakes. All right. And so that's what, hopefully the Hawks are trying to do. I think they're doing a good job of it so far in this offseason. And that's Trae Young. All right. So, this is your franchise player. I don't think he's going anywhere, folks. I really don't. I think all of this retooling is to build around Trae Young, not to, build without Trae Young, moving forward. Your second best player, now that Dejounte Murray's, out of the question, is up for debate, I'd say. But, who I think it is right now might shock a lot of people. And that is maybe the most underrated player in the league. I have talked ad nauseum about this player on the channel. And that is a player that I think, honestly, this is a hot take, has either star or superstar potential. He is that gifted, is Jalen Johnson, the forward out of Duke. Not enough people are talking about him. I say this every time I talk about him, but it's just true. Okay. He is an absolute problem for the NBA if he develops a little bit more. He's only 22 years old. He's 6'8", 220. He's got amazing size, a big frame. He can play the power forward. He can play the small forward. He can defend both, in my opinion. And he has offensive skills that I think haven't been properly recognized by the NBA community. Jalen Johnson is a great athlete who can score in transition with the best of them, finish through traffic. He is a strong guy. He has good hands. He has good, just natural, finishing ability in the paint, right? I'm sure you've seen some of his poster dunks. He's good at those, but the finishing through contact is a layer of dynamic offensive, forward capabilities that the Hawks just haven't had in a while. He is so efficient at every level. I mean, last year, I think without those, nagging injuries throughout the season, he only ended up playing 56 games. But when he was healthy, man, I just, I couldn't see a lot of weaknesses in this guy's game. I mean, he averaged 16 points a game. This is his third season last year, right? He's only 22 years old, out of Duke. Last year when he was healthy, 16 points a game, 9 rebounds. He is a great rebounder. Not a good one, a great one for his position. 9 rebounds per game, 4 assists. He had some playmaking capabilities. He can dribble the ball well for a forward. He can playmake for others well as a forward. 1.2 steals, about a block per game. He averaged 51% from the field. Okay, this is not an inefficient scorer by any means. 16 points on 51% from the field is incredible. And this is a guy that I think if you scale his volume up, it'll only, stay the same, his efficiency. Now, he averaged 36% from 3 on 4 attempts per game. That is the big thing, right? The first 2 years in his career, couldn't shoot the 3. Couldn't keep him on the floor because of it, pretty much. The way the Hawks like to run their offense, they need floor spacers from that position to allow Trae Young and whoever the big is to operate the pick and roll. Last year, he was very good on catch and shoots. Mostly that's what he's taking from 3, 36% on 4 attempts. If that continues and scales up the volume with the shot numbers, this is a star. This is a star player. He's a dynamic transition player, as I mentioned. If he can get to the line a little bit more and use that size to be able to get to the free throw line, he averaged 3 free throws a game last season, shot 73%. That's good enough. You'd like to see the free throw percentage rise a little bit, but if he can get 4 or 5 attempts per game, this is a guy that could do that. If he could work on his contact foul drawing and stuff like that, you're looking at a star. I don't know why. Am I crazy? Hawks fans, let me know. Am I crazy? Anyway, I can't talk about him all day, but I would if I could. I just love this guy that much. Not enough people are talking about it. Again, I personally think this is your second best player. Some people might not agree with that. Now, for the third best player, there are some multiple options. We could talk about Bogdan Bogdanovic, who is another super underrated player. I mean, this is a guy who's just an absolute bucket. He's been a bucket throughout his whole career. He is an elite shooter in this league. On the move, he can shoot the 3 extremely well. Catch and shoot, pull up, dribble, transition. He is just, he's got the whole package as far as shooting goes. He is a shooter. Last season averaged 37% from 3 on 8 attempts per game. Okay, that is elite. Those are, top 10 shooter numbers. I don't care what anyone says. He's also an elite free throw shooter, 92% from the line on 2 attempts per game. He's also a good ball handler. He can create for himself and others a little bit. This is a guy I think could be maybe the best 6th man in the league if he decides to be that role. If Coach Snyder wants to put him there, 17 points a game last season on 30 minutes per game. That is good numbers. Field goal percentage is a little low, 43%, but for a 6-man spark plug, instant offense guy, that's about what you'd expect, to be honest with you. About 3 rebounds, 3 assists per game. This is just a bucket bogey, and this is a player that I think a lot of people are wanting to be traded to their team. He's a sought after player, and I think, with his veteran experience and just how good he is right now, it, maybe would make a little bit sense, unless the Hawks were trying to compete next season, which I think they're a little bit in that in-between area. They're not going to quite tank, I don't think, but they're not necessarily go out on the trade deadline and try to get a star player to compete for a championship. I think they're somewhere in between, right? So, having Bogey, again, it could help, obviously, this team, but maybe get a lot of value for Bogey. A couple first-round picks even. Like, he's that good of a value player. Just a total bucket. One of the best shooters in the league, no question about it. Now, we have to talk about Zaccharie Risacher. I think he is a starting caliber player day one. I know he had some struggles offensively from all three levels. I mean, the field goal percentage was bad, the three-point shooting was bad, and the free throw percentage was even worse. This is a player that needs to work on his, consistency offensively. That's just the bottom line. I think he does have a lot of shooting upside from three. This is, primarily one of his biggest strengths going into the draft was his shooting ability. A lot of people compared him to a shooter like Trey Murphy or maybe even Michael Porter Jr. I know that's not probably the best comparison for him because he's a way better defender than I think both of those guys will ever be. It's just really not a great comparison in general, but the shooting ability, I think you could see similar things from a forward that can shoot over defenders, that has good length to him, and it just is able to get those three-point shots off in with a hand in his face on high volume with good efficiency. That's what you're hoping he can develop into on the offensive end. He's also a smart player. I think a lot of the European players are super smart fundamental players. I think Zaccharie Risacher has that to him as well. He seems to understand the game super well for his young age. I just think, passing and, playmaking could be something he could develop a little bit more as well, and creating on the ball. That is, I guess, probably what you're hoping for the most out of anything, the shooting and the on-ball playmaking. But the defense is just going to be there from day one. This guy can defend at a high level, for multiple positions. I think he has to either start or play a prominent role off the bench with a staggered wing rotation. No question. He's got to average at least 20-25 minutes per game next season, no matter how he shoots the ball, initially. Again, this is not a team that's going to compete for a championship this season. They're not expected to be in the conference finals or anything like that. So why not throw him out there, let him work through his mistakes so that when he is ready, it'll be faster than slower. And also when you are trying to compete, maybe next season, maybe the season after that, 2026, 2027, whatever it is, he's already worked through all those mistakes and he's already had the best chance he can have to develop. If he doesn't develop, that's the result you get. But I think you got to give him the shot. Either way, again, people are going to criticize this first overall pick. They're going to see first overall and they're going to see Risacher, who I don't know that necessarily has superstar potential, at least offensively. That's not really what matters with the first overall pick, so I don't know where people are getting that. It's way too early to criticize this guy. He's not even played an NBA game yet. This is a player we have to be patient with, and this is a player we have to give a lot of time to and let him, give him some grace working through those mistakes. Like I said, Risacher should be a great player in this league. You just have to let him do that. We have to be patient. And I know it's hard, Hawks fans, but I promise that's the best course of action you could take. Now, let's talk about the two centers. We're going to start with Clint Capela because I expect him to start next season. This is a player that I think, another guy a veteran guy that could be on the trade block. He has high value right now for a, competitive team. He has a high salary as well at $20 million. But Clint Capela is definitely a good center, even at, 30 years old. He's just going to get you a double-double. He's a great roller, great pick and roll guy. One of the best lob finishers I've seen. And with Trey Young, it's the perfect pairing. We saw their chemistry throughout their time together. They just play so well on the pick and roll together. They do this thing where, if Trey Young comes off the pick and roll, if the center hedges, meaning comes towards the ball handler instead of dropping back into drop coverage, Trey Young will throw a lob to Clint Capela most likely. If the weak side defender chooses to help, you have an open three in the corner or on the wing, so Trey Young can make that pass. And if the center decides not to help and it drops back into drop coverage, it's most likely that the Trey Young defender is still a little behind from that screen. Trey Young penetrates and hits a floater, which he is so good at, one of the best floater guys in the league. Their pick and roll chemistry is elite. I've watched it a million times going against my Sixers in those 2021 playoffs. Still not over that, Hawks fans, but Clint Capela is a good defender as well. Good rim protector. He's just a solid above average center that I think is worth a lot of things in this league. And if you could get a couple, picks for him or a, big need or a young player, I think, maybe you look into that because primarily you have Onyeka Okongwu backing him up. And Onyeka is definitely a guy that I think has a ton of starting center potential. The Hawks like to stagger their centers where they will play Capela and Okongwu up, close to 25 minutes each per game. I think Capela gets a little bit more minutes because he's, maybe a little bit better at the things the Hawks like to do. But listen, Okongwu is the center of the future. I mean, he's 23 years old. People could say he's a power forward. He's a center. Last season improved quite a bit offensively. I mean, he even expanded his game to a three-point shot just a little bit, more than previous seasons. And that is huge for his development. He's a really good mid-range shooter as well. Good free throw shooter, better than Capela will ever be at shooting the basketball. And he's a good defender. He's a versatile defender. I think he's a little, maybe just a tad undersized for a, center that you'd like to see height-wise. He's 6'10". I think he's more like 6'9" or 6'8". He's 240 pounds, which is good. But this is just a efficient player on all levels and on both ends of the floor. This is the center I think you want to have on the floor more often than not. And I know Capela's good and you like to, to split them up. But if we're really retooling and focusing on a young core, Okongwu's got to be a part of that. He's just so good. I think he's going to get even better. He's improved every season he's been in the league. And this, again, the center I think you have to keep your eye on if you are a, Hawks fan as a young player of this future core. Someone interesting on the Hawks that I think is really solid is DeAndre Hunter. And it's just going to be interesting to see what his role will be next season. You have Risacher, you have Jalen Johnson, and so you can't give 30 minutes a game to all three of those guys. It'll be interesting to see what DeAndre Hunter's role looks like. I know there's two wing spots. I know you could play, DeAndre Hunter at the 3, maybe the 4. I know you could play Jalen Johnson at the 3 or the 4. And I know Zaccharie Risacher, realistically, you could play him maybe even at the 2, 3, or 4. I think he's more of a 3 or a 4, but that's a lot of numbers. I apologize. A lot of 3s and 4s there, folks. But listen, you also have other forwards that we'll get into a little bit more. DeAndre Hunter, I think, is most likely could be the odd man out, but he's a great scorer. That's the thing about DeAndre Hunter that is a little bit different of a skill set than both of those guys. I think Jaylen Johnson is the best player of the 3 right now. I think Zaccharie Risacher could be the best player of the 3 in 3 years, and I think DeAndre Hunter is somewhere in the middle. I think we kind of know what DeAndre Hunter is, and that is just a good volume scorer. This guy could give you a bucket on multiple levels. He can give you a bucket on catch and shoot 3s. He can handle the ball a little bit, create for himself in the mid-range and in the post. He could get to the rim and the line and finish. He is one of the better guys at getting to the line on this team. He's a big guy, 6'8", 221. He is just an efficient scorer, and I think having him come off the bench is probably the most likely scenario, but you can't necessarily give him like less than 20 minutes a game and have him be at his full value. So someone's gonna have to get less minutes. So I think the starting lineup could be him and Jalen Johnson for the wings, and then I think off the bench it could be Risacher at least originally, or it could be DeAndre Hunter off the bench. I think you have to start Jalen Johnson, but it'll be interesting to see how Coach Snyder and his staff want to work those minutes. I like DeAndre Hunter. I think he could help a team a lot that is looking for a wing scorer. You saw what PJ Washington was able to do with the Mavericks last season. I see a similar type of skill set there offensively for DeAndre Hunter. So we're just gonna have to see how it works out. I think there's a lot of opportunities, and having too many good wings that can score and provide value on both ends is not necessarily a bad thing. That's a good problem to have. So I'm sure Coach Snyder will figure that out. He is a great coach. We talked about Dyson Daniels and how his value as a playmaker is superb. This is a player that for a guard, I think he is most likely like a point forward or guard. He could be a combo guard, but he kind of plays in the role of a point guard offensively. He can handle the ball and distribute extremely well. I know you look at the assist numbers, you say, oh, well, 2.7 assists. It's not really great, but if you watch him play, it's a little bit different than that. I don't think that does him justice. I know there are concerns with his 3-point shooting. It's inconsistent, and quite frankly, the percentage is not good enough, at 31% throughout his first 2 seasons. The free throw percentage is off as well. This is a role player that I think you give a little bit of minutes to, at least, close to 20 minutes for a, shooting guard or whatever. He could end up being even your backup point guard. With him and Bogey, I think could make a great pairing with Dyson Daniels' size and Bogey's offensive ability. Dyson Daniels, I think, mostly shines on the defensive end of the floor. I don't know if I ever actually talked about this in a video, but I think Dyson Daniels has the skill set maybe of like in the future, if everything works out for him and his development is as good as it can be, I think his skill set could end up being something similar to like a Draymond Green type player. Okay, they both have like power forward bodies, and they both are versatile defenders with playmaking upside that can handle the ball, but never are going to be like incredible scorers. I think that is a good comparison. That's what you hope Dyson Daniels could develop into. I'm not sure, Draymond Green's gonna be a Hall of Famer. I'm not sure it's ever going to be that great. Hopefully he can, but I think that is a good, comp for what you'd want him to develop into. But right now he's going to give you a versatile defender who can guard multiple positions, a guy that has incredible size, and for a playmaker that is exceptional. Some of the prospects I like on this team include Kobe Bufkin and Seth Lundy, both of them being guards out of the 2023 draft class. Kobe Bufkin, the higher pick of the two, being the 15th overall pick in 2023, didn't get substantial minutes. Again, there's a lot of good guards on this team, and that's why I think Bogey could be out as well. Another reason, because you just have a lot of young guards that you'd like to get some minutes to, and we know Trey Young is going to get the bulk of them. Obviously, we know Bogey is good enough to get the bulk of some of them, and you bring in a guy like Dyson Daniels. This is, one of the more interesting things. I think we could develop Kobe Bufkin, who I actually liked quite a bit. I liked him a lot coming out of Michigan, and his skill set is really good. He's a big combo guard, 6'5", 195. He's got great length as well, so I think he could be versatile on both ends. And then Seth Lundy, more of an offensive guy, a little bit less of an athlete, I'd say, but out of Penn State, his shooting, I think, was most impressive, but either way you slice it. I mean, this is a guard tandem that I think development is going to be stressed highly, and that's going to be the biggest thing. How good can they get? Clearly Coach Snyder and his staff didn't think they were ready last season. I know they were, having to give Dejounte Murray minutes too. So I think one of those guys at the minimum will get at least a good chance to play some meaningful regular season minutes. Maybe they've gotten better, through a year in the NBA. I know the NBA schedule is tough on rookie guards, so those are definitely two guys to watch, and Larry Nance is a good role player. He's a really solid backup power forward or center, probably center. You have a ton of bigs that can play NBA minutes right now. Larry Nance is a solid athlete. He's a great athlete, actually. Even at his age of 31, he can get up and down the floor really well for a big man. A little bit undersized for a backup center, but with his a little bit of three-point shooting ability that he's developed, last year shot really well, 42% from three on about an attempt per game in 20 minutes played with the Pelicans. He was good with the Pelicans, man, and he's a good offensive rebounder. That's, I think, the best thing about Larry Nance: offensive rebounding, athleticism, the ability to put back offensive rebounds, and the floor spacing at times. This is just an athletic guy that I think could give you a different look off the bench as a big. Vik Krejci is the 24-year-old guard that you re-signed. He was a member of the 2020 NBA draft class. He was picked 37th overall in the second round by Washington, and now 2 seasons with the Hawks, but really showed a lot of promising ability to shoot the basketball extremely well, and a versatile offensive player with extremely big size. Again, the Hawks are really bulking up on size here around Trey Young, which I think is a beautiful thing. Their lineup is going to be so big next season around Trey Young. Think about Risacher, who's what, 6'9"? Yeah, 6'9". And then, Clint Capela, who's basically a 7-footer. It's going to say 6'10", but, he's a legit 6'10". You could start Bogey at 6'5", or you could play, someone else at the 2 like Krejci, who is 6'8". And then at the, forward spots, you have, again, Risacher, who's 6'9", Jalen Johnson, who's 6'8", but plays bigger. He's more like 6'9" or 6'10", in my opinion. That's just a massive lineup around a smaller Trey Young, and I think that's a beautiful thing that they're trying to do there. But yeah, Vik Krejci, really good shooter and, playmaker for his position. Combo guard, I think. Probably more of a 2 guard or a 3. 6'8", 195. It just shoots the ball really well. Last season shot 41% on 3.1 attempts per game in a limited role with the Hawks. 22 games played. He actually ended up starting 14 games for the Hawks, so I think that is something to note. He could start with Bogey coming off the bench next season, or he could, be the bench guy instead of Bogey. We'll just have to see, but he can play make as well. 2.3 assists, 2.3 rebounds. Just a good player. I like the multi-year extension, and that is pretty much it, I think, for the notable roster pieces that I want to talk about in this video. We could be here all day. I mean, the Hawks have so many great players. Honorable mentions to Bruno Fernando, Mohamed Goye, Nikola Jurisic, who you drafted, or who you traded for, out of the draft this season, Cody Zeller in the trade, Wesley Matthews and Garrison Matthews. There's just so many deep players. I'm so curious to see how Coach Snyder, uses these players in the minutes in the rotation. I think he's got his work cut out for him, because there's going to be a ton of question marks with the wings, the bigs, and, I think you could maybe use another guard that can, help fill out the rotation a little bit. Maybe it could be Bufkin or Seth Lundy, or maybe it's Dyson Daniels. I don't know, but, I think there is just kind of a logjam at some of those things, and I guess it'll work itself out. And I would have faith in Coach Snyder to figure it out. He's a great offensive coach. But yeah, I would expect with this roster, the Hawks to be hovering around a play-in tournament spot, probably like 11th, 12th, something around there. I just don't think the play-in selection is going to be as big as it was last year. You're going to have a bunch of teams at the bottom of the conference, like Brooklyn, like potentially Washington, potentially Detroit. I don't know. I think they're, kind of somewhere in that tier. But I also think when you have Trey Young and a bunch of veterans that are, serviceable, with a lot of young pieces that can help you right now, like DeAndre Hunter, like Jalen Johnson primarily, I don't know how this team isn't viewed as a play-in team. We're somewhere close to it at the minimum, assuming nobody gets injured and you have a good coach and system being put in place in Quinn Snyder. And I like the use from the front office of getting a lot of size and, length and athleticism and defensive versatility around Trey Young. That is what I love the most about what they're doing in the front office. That is how you build a team. Your concern has been Trey Young and his defense and his size limitations. Let me surround him with a bunch of 6'8" wings and, defensive versatile players that can make up for a lot of those mistakes and just be freak athletes and help him out in that regard. I love it. So Hawks fans, as usual, let me know down in the comment section what you think of my takes, what you think of this video, and what you think of your team in 2025. I think they're being mischaracterized by the media and the NBA community. I think they are a legit, threat moving forward in the future. They clearly have a ton of potential, and look out for Jaylen Johnson to be most improved player next season. He is a guy to watch, no question. This is an exciting team with a lot of athletes and a lot of potential, primarily, the wings. Zaccharie Risacher, Jalen Johnson, even the couple guards, like Dyson Daniels, Kobe Bufkin. This is just an intriguing team to me that I think is going to be really fun to watch. They're going to play really fast, and they're going to get up and down the floor quite a bit, and I would expect their pace to be pretty high, as well as their defense to be much improved from last season. You get a lot bigger. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. We upload content just like this every day on the channel. If you guys don't want to miss any more deep dives, we'll be trying to do every NBA team deep dive by the end of the offseason. We're really close to about, maybe a third of the way there. I think I've made, maybe 5, 6, or 7 deep dives at this point. Make sure you guys check those out if you guys haven't already. You guys seem to really enjoy them. So thank you guys for all the support. And Hawks fans, hopefully I could do your team justice. I talk about this at the end of every deep dive video. Thank you guys for watching all the way to the end, by the way. But, there's going to be little things that you guys see with your team that, I just don't see because I'm not a fan of your team. As an outsider, I'm going to miss a lot of those things. You guys know way more about your team than I would. So I'm genuinely curious if you have any of those little things that I either mischaracterized, or maybe you have a totally different consensus of as a fan base, like, a certain player that I like or don't like that you do or don't, that's the kind of thing I want you guys to let me know down in the comments, because I'm always trying to learn. The best way I can learn is from the individual fan base of the team. Really helps me as a creator and just a basketball fan in general to know more stuff from the direct source, which is the fan base. So again, you guys know most about your team, so help me out if you guys can. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully I could do your team some justice. I think a lot of times there's just like a narrative or two that gets most of the attention, right? For the Hawks, it's rebuilding, and for the Hawks, it's tanking and starting over. I just think that's not true. That's not what they're doing. I think that's what a lot of people are saying. They're gonna, people, I've seen a ton of people say they're gonna be the worst team in the league next year. Get out of here. That's just, I can name 5 other teams that are gonna finish worse than them, and I bet money on it. Either way, hopefully guys, have a great rest of your day today. Make sure you guys drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Atlanta, how we feeling? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives. Maybe who knows, maybe we'll do your favorite team next, because again, I'm going to be covering every team. So make sure you guys have a great rest of your day today. Hopefully you guys do really well next season for the Hawks. I'm rooting for you guys, and I'm rooting for every team, and I just love communicating with the fan bases, and the more I communicate with each individual fan base, the more I root for those teams, because the fans have just been so great throughout these deep dive videos. I just love engaging with other fan bases. They're so respectful and amazing and supportive. So Hawks fans, let me know. I'll catch you guys tomorrow in the next video. This is your boy D Haven. As always, peace.